All right, so buckle up, listeners, because today we are diving into a book that claims that Washington, D.C. is hiding a secret.
Whoa, a secret? Like what kind of secret?
No, no, not like a, shady backroom deal or anything like that.
Okay.
This is a secret woven into the very streets we walk on.
Really?
A secret so big,
Yeah.
you'd need a bird's eye view of the city to catch it.
Wow, back in like 1792 or something.
Back in 1792, that's right.
Huh, interesting. So where do we even start with a secret like that?
Well, it all starts with this book.
Okay.
America's Oldest Secret.
America's Oldest Secret.
Okay, and it argues that this secret is hidden in plain sight in the city's design.
The city's design, you mean like the street layout and the monuments and all that?
Yes.
See, that's what I find fascinating, right?
Mm.
Back then, city planning, it wasn't exactly public knowledge, right? You think about today, blueprints are everywhere, open to scrutiny, but back then,
Right.
shrouded in secrecy.
Much more hush-hush.
Exactly. And this book, it argues that that secrecy allowed for something extraordinary to take place in the design of Washington, D.C.
Okay, so you're saying someone looked at a map of D.C. and saw, what, like a secret code?
Well, the author starts by comparing the layout of D.C. to places like Stonehenge,
Stonehenge?
the Nazca lines.
Wow, okay.
These massive geoglyphs, only visible from above.
Okay, I'm picturing those aerial photos now, but those are ancient sites, right? What does that have to do with Washington, D.C.?
That's the question, isn't it? But think about it. Those sites, they're often attributed to ancient rituals,
Okay.
attempts to connect with the cosmos, maybe even harness some kind of power.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but D.C.? Really?
I know, it sounds far-fetched. But the book doesn't shy away from bold claims. It points to specific shapes embedded within the city's layout.
Like what? Give me an example.
Hexagrams,
Hexagrams.
pentagrams, even a formation using the Washington Monument.
Well, Washington Monument. Now, you have to explain that one.
Well, the author likens it to, well, a giant birth symbol.
A birth symbol. Okay, now that's just weird.
It is a bit out there, I'll grant you that, but
Yeah,
even if these symbols are intentionally placed,
right.
they could have a million explanations, right?
Exactly. What makes the author think they're tied to ancient rituals and Stonehenge and all of that?
Because those symbols, like the hexagram, also known as the Star of David,
Sure.
and the pentagram, have been associated with various esoteric traditions for centuries.
Right, but those symbols have been around forever.
Exactly. And while their meanings have evolved over time,
Mm-hmm.
the author argues that their presence in DC's layout hints at something more deliberate, more symbolic than just aesthetic city planning.
So we're talking about the Founding Fathers potentially dabbling in esoteric knowledge. I mean, I know Ben Franklin was into some weird stuff.
Right. And Thomas Jefferson was known to study ancient texts, so it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility.
Okay, so let's say for argument's sake that these shapes aren't just coincidences. How did they get there? I mean, we all learned about Pierre Charles L'Enfant,
L'Enfant, right?
the architect behind DC's design.
Of course.
So is this book saying that L'Enfant was secretly part of some, I don't know, secret society or something?
Well, the book takes an interesting turn there. It acknowledges L'Enfant's role,
Okay.
but suggests that he might have been following a more intricate set of instructions,
From who?
potentially from figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson themselves.
Oh, so it's a conspiracy.
Well, the book certainly doesn't shy away from that possibility. It makes a pretty big deal about some missing diaries.
Missing diaries. Whose diaries?
Washington and Jefferson's.
Really?
From the time D.C. was being planned, apparently they're unaccounted for.
So are you saying that they were secretly meeting in the shadows, sketching out plans for a mystical capital city?
Well, it's more that their potential involvement adds another layer of intrigue to this whole thing.
Okay, I'll bite. How so?
Think about it. If they were deeply involved in imbuing the city with symbolic meaning, they wouldn't want that getting out, would they?
Especially not back then.
Exactly.
So it's like they were trying to hide their true intentions under the guise of just designing a city.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It raises the question, what were they trying to protect? Was it just a matter of keeping their personal beliefs private?
Or was there something more to this grand design that they wanted to keep hidden from the public? Okay, so we've got this city potentially designed with a secret purpose. Influential figures maybe trying to keep things under wraps. It's giving like Dan Brown novel vibes, I have to admit.
Right.
But let's get back to those symbols for a second.
Okay.
What what exactly did the author think they were trying to do with all those shapes? Like, what was the point?
Well, this is where the book gets into the idea
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
ritual landscape.
A ritual landscape, what does that even mean?
Basically, a place intentionally designed to,
Okay.
facilitate or enhance rituals.
So it's not just about what the symbols mean individually, but how they all work together within the city's design.
Exactly. Like they're all part of some bigger intentional pattern.
Mm.
And it gets even more specific.
Oh.
The book suggests that some of DC's street names,
You mean like the actual names themselves?
yes,
Oh.
especially those near certain symbols, might have been chosen because they corresponded to the names of angels or other entities.
Wait, angels? Like biblical angels?
Well, more like entities that were invoked in 18th century magical practices.
Wow, okay. So we're talking about potentially using the city itself as a giant magical tool.
It's a bold claim, I know,
That's an understatement.
but the book does back it up with some compelling arguments.
Like what?
Well, for example, it highlights how certain streets and monuments appear to align with significant astronomical events.
Like solstices and equinoxes?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Which, to be fair, isn't that unusual for ancient sites?
right, like Stonehenge.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the book argues that DC's designers may have been drawing on that same ancient knowledge.
Okay, I'm picturing Benjamin Franklin sneaking out at midnight to check the alignment of the Washington Monument shadow with like a compass and quill.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
But you have to admit, it's a pretty wild image.
It does make you think about those early leaders,
Right.
steeped in both Enlightenment thought and awareness of older, more esoteric traditions.
Trying to maybe, I don't know, imbue this new nation with a sense of destiny?
Exactly. Of cosmic significance.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got symbols, potential alignments, missing diaries. It's a lot to take in, but I have to ask about the elephant, or rather the Templar in the room.
Okay, I think I know where you're going with this.
The book goes all in on this being tied to the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, right?
It does. And while that's certainly a captivating hook, it's important to remember that the Knights Templar connection is where the book, well, it veers furthest into speculation.
Right, but for our listeners who might not be familiar with the Knights Templar, can you give us a quick rundown of why they're even relevant to this story?
Sure. The Knights Templar were a medieval order. They amassed considerable wealth and power,
Okay.
and they were shrouded in secrecy.
Right, secret societies, hidden agendas, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when they were eventually disbanded under accusations of heresy, it fueled all sorts of legends.
Especially those involving hidden treasure, right? Like, that's the big one.
Exactly.
And this book claims that treasure might be hidden in D.C.
That's the claim. It draws connections between some cryptic clues.
Cryptic clues, like what?
Well, supposedly found on a stone in France, the Kung-sur-de stone, and specific locations in D.C.
Wait, hold on. A stone in France is giving us clues to a treasure buried in Washington, D.C.
It's a bit convoluted, I'll admit, but basically the book suggests that the stone mentions a mysterious M
Okay.
that cuts through a lesser line.
Okay, I'm officially lost.
Well, the author connects that to the way North and South M Street intersect with other streets in D.C.
Okay.
And those intersections, according to the book, could be the key to, triangulating the treasure's location.
Triangulating, like we're suddenly in national treasure territory.
that
Okay, come on, that's a bit much, even for this book.
It is a bit of a stretch, I'll grant you that. But the book even points to specific places,
Oh.
like Ward Place. It's a park southeast of the Capitol, and even the Navy Yard as potential hiding spots.
Okay, I'll admit, even if it's a long shot, the idea of the Founding Fathers stashing the Knights Templar's lost treasure beneath the U.S. Capitol is a pretty amazing thought.
It's a great story, even if it's not true.
Right, but let's be real. That's a lot of ifs and maybes stacked on top of each other.
It is, and it's important to approach those claims with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Absolutely. But even if we set aside the treasure hunt aspect for a moment, the book's exploration of the Knights Templar highlights this recurring fascination with secret societies and hidden knowledge.
Right. It's a theme that runs through history.
And which, as you mentioned earlier, ties into that whole history of esoteric groups and their potential influence on everything from, philosophy to maybe even city planning.
Exactly. These ideas, they have a way of resurfacing throughout history.
Speaking of those groups, the book doesn't just stop at the Knights Templar, does it?
It does not.
Mm-hmm.
It goes on to explore a whole web of potential players in this grand conspiracy.
Yeah.
The Freemasons, The Rosicrucians, even the Illuminati get a mention.
It's like a who's who of history's most mysterious organizations.
It really is. And while it's easy to get caught up in the intrigue of those names,
Right.
the book's real point is that these groups, regardless of their individual beliefs or practices, all tapped into something larger.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
A desire to connect with something beyond the mundane.
Something hidden beneath the surface of everyday life.
Exactly.
It's that idea that there's more to the world than meets the eye, right? That there are secrets waiting to be uncovered if only you know where to look.
Precisely. And whether or not you believe that those secrets are hidden in the layout of Washington, D.C.,
Right.
the book encourages us to ask the question, what if they are? What if those seemingly random arrangements of streets and buildings hold a deeper meaning? A message whispered across centuries.
It's like those optical illusions where you have to look at it a certain way to see the hidden image. You're saying the city itself might be that hidden image.
In a way, yes. And just like those optical illusions, once you see it, it's hard to unsee it, you know? It makes you wonder.
Else have we missed?
Exactly.
What other secrets are hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to decipher them?
It's an exciting thought, isn't it?
Okay, well, consider my curiosity officially piqued.
Good.
But before we get too lost in speculation, I'm dying to know more about these so-called events in the East. The book keeps mentioning them, but what are they exactly? What's going on over there?
Ah, yes. The event in the East. This is where the book takes a turn towards astronomy.
Astronomy. Okay.
Suggesting that those symbols we've been discussing might not just be about esoteric traditions or hidden messages, but also about tracking specific celestial events.
Celestial events, like what? Like comets, eclipses, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And the book argues that these events are somehow linked to those key symbols we've been discussing.
Like that spear point shape?
Yes, the spear point, also known as the Shield of Christ, which appears prominently in D.C., Rome, and Jerusalem.
Okay, this is where I need a visual aid. You're telling me there are giant spear point shapes etched into the layouts of these cities?
Well, that's the idea.
And they're pointing towards some kind of important celestial event in the East.
That's the gist of it, yes.
This is getting wild. And remember how the book links those locations to the historical locations of the Ark of the Covenant?
Right, the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem,
Yeah.
the Temple of Vespasian in Rome, and potentially even a location in Egypt near the pyramids.
So you're saying these locations, marked by the spear point shape, might have been chosen because they offered a clear view of whatever this celestial event was.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that the book claims even the non-important lines, those lines that cut through the spear points,
Yeah.
they aren't random.
They're not.
They point towards the constellation Triangulum.
Triangulum. Why is that significant?
Well, for one, Triangulum is closely linked to Aries.
Aries, the ram.
Exactly. And Aries, as we discussed earlier, is associated with Asmodeus.
Asmodeus, wait a minute. The guardian of the treasure of Solomon. So we're back to the treasure. It's like we've come full circle.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? But what's even more intriguing is that the author connects this constellation, Triangulum, to a potential cataclysmic event.
Cataclysmic. You're not sugarcoating it at all, are you?
Well, the book certainly doesn't. It delves into the possibility of comets, novas, even planetary alignments as potential candidates for this event in the East. And it even suggests that one of these events might not just be a spectacle in the night sky.
But a potential threat to Earth. Okay, now you've got my attention. Comets. Novas. Potential threats. We're going to need a lot more information about these events because suddenly this isn't just about hidden symbols and lost treasure, it's about the fate of the planet. All right, so we're talking comets, novas, planetary alignments, maybe even a dash of ancient prophecy for good measure. It's a lot to process. Does the book give us any more concrete clues about what these events might be, or are we just in speculation territory?
Well, you know, the book does this interesting thing where it walks this line between, like, historical analysis and, well, imaginative interpretation, you could say.
Okay, so you're saying it's not just throwing out crazy theories for the fun of it.
Right. Like there's actual research grounding it.
Okay.
For example, there's this part where the author talks about having a conversation with some astronomers.
Astronomer.
Yeah, at the Lunar Planetary Lab. And they were discussing potentially hazardous asteroids.
Hazardous asteroids. Now you have my full attention. That sounds a little too close to home.
Yeah, and they specifically brought up this asteroid named Hermes.
Hermes, like the messenger god.
Exactly right. And get this asteroid, it came incredibly close to Earth back in the 1930s.
Wow, okay.
But then it vanished.
Vanished. Like they don't know where it went?
They couldn't track its orbit fully, so it's out there somewhere.
That's unnerving.
And the astronomers, they didn't mince words. They basically said an impact from an asteroid like Hermes, catastrophic.
Catastrophic, like dinosaur-level event.
That's what they said.
Okay, so now we're not just talking about hidden symbols and lost treasure anymore. This is like planetary survival we're talking about.
Right. And the author connects this missing asteroid Hermes to the constellation Triangulum.
Triangulum, as in the same one those lines in D.C., Rome, and Jerusalem might be pointing to.
It's quite a coincidence if it is one, don't you think?
Yeah.
This potentially dangerous asteroid linked to the same constellation that seems to be at the center of this whole design.
So what are we supposed to do with this information? What's the takeaway here? Should we all be prepping for a doomsday asteroid because of some shakes in the ground?
Well, the book doesn't really offer any concrete answers,
Okay.
but I think it does something quite clever.
What's that?
It kind of reframes the whole thing as a call to action.
A call to action. You mean like grab your shovel and head to D.C.?
No, not exactly, though I wouldn't be surprised if some people did.
Right.
It's more about encouraging people to think critically,
Mm.
question assumptions,
Okay.
and maybe most importantly, look at the world around us with fresh eyes, really observe things.
So it's less about finding a literal treasure chest and more about uncovering the hidden connections that might be right in front of us all along.
Exactly. It's about embracing curiosity, acknowledging that there might be more to our history, to our place in the cosmos, than we think.
It's almost like the book is a giant puzzle box.
I like that analogy.
Even if we never find all the pieces, the act of searching, trying to connect the dots, that's where the real value is.
Absolutely. And, maybe, just maybe, in that process of searching, we stumble upon something truly remarkable.
Something that changes everything.
Exactly.
Well, listeners, what do you think? Are you up for a little treasure hunt of your own? Next time you're walking around, take a closer look at things. You never know what secrets you might uncover when you start looking at the world with new eyes.
I think that's a perfect note to end on, don't you? Keep an open mind, stay
Yeah.
curious.
And maybe, just maybe, we'll find that the greatest discoveries weren't hidden at all, just waiting for us to finally pay attention.